Greetings, friends and fellow freelancers. Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop Mercenary. In light of our recent achievement as a channel here on YouTube, I wanted to take a moment and make a video explaining how it is we got here and laying out our timeline and our journey from when we began as a channel to how we finally got ourselves monetized and turned this into more than just an extension of the company and our games. Because there are a lot of misconceptions about how YouTube works, how profitable YouTube is, and so on and so forth. So if you were thinking about getting on this platform and you were intending on making it a part of your business plan, whether you're an individual or you're a company, take this journey with me. Let me walk you through what we've been through so that you can decide for yourself whether this is going to do what you want it to do and how much energy it's actually going to take you to get from where you are to where you want to be. But before we get started on that, let me explain how it is YouTube actually works for those of you who are here and haven't done your research and aren't entirely sure how it is you make money making videos on this platform. First and foremost, the main way that lots of creators earn their money is ad revenue. As we all know, when you play a YouTube video, there's usually an ad, and if the video is particularly long, there's usually an ad or two throughout the process. The company who runs the ad pays YouTube. YouTube then takes a portion of that money, gives it to you as the creator because you are the one making the content people are here to see. And as such, your content is the one the ads are running on. The more videos you get, the more views you get, the more folks watching the ads, the more money you end up with at the end of the month. It's pretty cut and dry. It's also very similar to how most of the older parts of the internet work. For those who remember, blogs back in the day when there was ads on everything, that's why those ads are what supported the bloggers, it's what supported the websites, and it's what's allowed them to provide free content because they were still earning something from all that traffic. Now, there are other methods to make money on YouTube, of course. You can get a superfan, I believe is what it's called. It's when your channel reaches a certain point, people can just decide they want to leave you a tip. They can click that, and then boom, YouTube magically sends you some money. People can also become supporters of the channel, which then allows them to essentially give you regular fees. It's very similar to how you would be supported on Patreon. If folks really like a channel, really like a creator, they can kick in their own money and make sure that you get paid at the end of the month so that you can keep making content. You don't have to quit YouTube and go get a day job. Those are the three main methods that folks are going to see, and those are the ones that come from YouTube itself. This is not including things like Ko-fi, Patreon, getting a deal from someone to promote their product. Those are all things that can happen, but they're not how you make money from YouTube itself. And it is important to keep that distinction in mind as we go forward. Now, come back with me as we rewind time back to the year 2022. And the Azukail Games channel had been around for a few years before that, but that is when I showed up as a contributor, and it's when I started making videos for the channel. So that's around the time that my firsthand knowledge of what's going on actually becomes useful. Now, when I first showed up in 2022, we had 300 and change subscribers, which isn't nothing, but in the grand scheme of YouTube, it is very small. Not that we're gigantic now, which is why you should, like and subscribe. But we only had about 300 subscribers and change, and we had a couple hundred view hours at most. Now, what lots of folks don't know is at that time, in order to get any monetization at all on YouTube, you had to essentially have 1,000 subscribers, which we were pretty far from, and you had to have 4,000 hours of watched content in 1 year's time. And that is to say that in the past 365 days, you needed to have crossed that threshold. For those who don't want to do the math, I've talked about this previously, that's about 11 hours and change a day, which means for not quite half a day's cycle, you had to have someone watching your channel and your content. And that is a lot harder to manage than you might think, especially if you make videos that are shorter in length, if you make things that people don't need to replay a lot, particularly things like music, videos, things like that. But it is a lot, just let me say that. And so that was a daunting task when I sat down, broke it down, and realized how much we would need to get that done. But the reason I started contributing videos to the channel at first was not specifically to monetize us. It was because Adrian Kennelly, the fellow who runs both Azukail Games and the channel here on YouTube, needed extra content, and he could only make so much of it himself. He was doing previews for the supplements as they came out, And YouTube was mostly a way to host those so that they could play on other platforms like DriveThruRPG. But he wanted to change things up a bit, so he came to me and asked me to make a video about Sundara to try and get more people into that setting since I was releasing content for it. And so I put out, the philosophy of Sundara, or the philosophy of the cities of Sundara, depending on how you choose to view it. And it was mostly just me explaining how I was breaking down the world, how things were going to be a little bit different in that fantasy setting than folks were used to, but also how things were going to be the same, depending on what view you took. And it did all right. It was a little, it had a little bit of popularity, not enough that I immediately decided, YouTube, that's where I need to be, but enough that I was like, well, that wasn't a failure. Let's see what else we can do. And because the idea was getting more people into our supplements and finding another way to actually get them in front of folks' eyes, I came up with the idea of taking these small bits of fiction from the front and occasionally from the back of the supplements I was putting out and doing an audio drama version of them, because I really enjoy audio dramas. And, with podcasts being what they are, it's an art form that has found a much bigger audience than it would have had, a decade and change ago. And so I started putting those out regularly, and eventually I got a mixed blend of talking about Sundara, breaking down the world, talking about what I was doing and trying to get folks into that fantasy setting. And I was coming out with audio pieces for the World of Darkness. I was coming out with audio for Sundara and for other generalized fantasy and sci-fi products that I was making. And it wasn't blowing up, but each video that came out was getting a couple hundred views. We were steadily gaining supporters. And it was around 2023 that I decided to expand into Discussions of Darkness, which is one of the longer running shows we have on the channel right now. And Discussions of Darkness was basically made because I was putting out a lot of World and Chronicles of Darkness supplements at the time. And I figured, well, the best way to get people interested in picking these up would be to talk about the setting, explain how these supplements are going to be useful, get people, psyched to get back into the dark and dreary streets of that particular setting. And that did pretty well. And it was later in that year that YouTube made an important announcement. And that announcement, for folks who didn't hear it at the time, was that they were altering their standards for monetization. I already mentioned what those were earlier, but to throw some more numbers at you, they essentially chopped them down so that it was easier to get monetized and to sort of encourage smaller creators to do more. The new standards they released were you only needed 500 subscribers, which at the time we had, and you needed 3,000 hours of watched content, which is 8 hours and change a day, before you could open some monetization efforts. Now, there was some fine print on this, which we found out, but I'll get to that part of the story when we get there. So that announcement was made, and that lit a bit of a fire under us, both myself and Adrian, because what had felt previously like it was a far-off goal that we were never really going to hit suddenly became much more attainable. The problem was, as we were working on more videos, we were trying to diversify content, we were trying to come up with new shows to get people's eyes on the channel, that was when the algorithm decided, we're going to change the way that we push stuff. So instead of getting a few hundred views per video, we were usually getting around 400 to 500 per new video. Sometimes we'd get as high as 700. Once or twice we hit 1,000 on a new release, which for us was really impressive. We were very small, and those kind of numbers are not something that happens all the time. After the algorithm shift, we were lucky to get 100 views, and that was after a full social media blitz, sharing it in newsletters, putting it on every platform we could think of. It became significantly harder to reach an audience. And I mentioned that within the past 365 days, this is where that becomes important. Because we had been trucking along, getting some really good views, coming out with a lot of stuff, getting a lot of eyes on our channel. Suddenly, when we hit that bump and we stopped getting as many views, that meant we were losing days from previously in that 365-day period where we'd had a lot of views, and they were being replaced with days where we had very few views. So we went from about 2,500 hours back down to about 1,800 hours. And we had to figure out a new strategy. We had to build ourselves back up, and we had to try to figure out how to get our audience to pay attention, which took us about a year. but we managed it. And, we started diversifying our content, which is how we got shows like, Tabletop Mercenary. It's also how we got a lot of the other things we're doing on the channel, of Adrian putting together his crafting videos, which have been very popular among a certain portion of the gaming public. And we were getting our feet back under us. We were moving along. We were moving slow, but we were still moving, and that's what was important. And it was around summer of last year in 2024 that we got very close to that 3,000 hour mark. And in early fall, we stepped over it. However, this is where we found out there was fine print involved in that statement, because YouTube had changed some of their monetization standards. Because if you had 500 viewers and 3,000 hours, you could now open those lesser versions of monetization I mentioned. You could have people leave you tips. You could have people support your channel in other ways. You didn't get ad revenue. For ad revenue, you still had to have 1,000 subs and you still had to have 4,000 watched hours, which was extraordinarily frustrating because I was getting ready to celebrate. I thought we'd finally hit a major goal, and it turned out actually we were only 3/4 of the way to that goal. That is why the end of 2024 was such a scrabble, both for myself and for the channel, because we got very, very lucky in that the video I made, the video essay, The Problem with Pentex, went the closest thing to viral we've had on the channel. I believe right now it sits at about 6,100 views, and given that the video itself is half an hour long, that added up to a lot of watch time. So it turns out that, fortunately, the success of that video shoved us right over that 4,000 hour mark, and we were able to get monetized officially at the beginning of 2025. However, that was a short version of our journey, and we still have a long way to go, but let me throw some more numbers at you, because I'm sure this is a thing folks are feeling a little confused and a little frustrated by. So, since I came on, it's been about 3 years. That is 3 years where none of our content made any money, aside from what our audience chose to do to support us on Patreon, support us on Ko-fi, which there have been folks who have done that, and my hat's off to all of you for the help you have provided. But I want folks to really think about that, really chew down and think this through, because it is possible to build a following on YouTube. It is possible to turn YouTube into a real earning platform to help you pay your bills and to help supplement what you make as a TTRPG creator. But ask yourself how many views you are likely to get on your content. And this is going to vary based on how big is the audience you already have. What skill and experience do you have as a content creator? For example, if you're used to being on camera, if you already have a lot of video editing skills, if you're used to making animations or things like that, you probably have a leg up on a lot of the competition. If you already have a well-known name, a well-established audience, you could just bop over to YouTube and probably get a lot of those folks to help you out so that you could do in weeks or months what it took us years to do, because we started without a lot of that knowledge. If you go back to some of those earlier videos I was in, oh boy, I did not have good equipment. I did not have a lot of experience. I didn't really know how to edit anything, so it was basically one take and done. There was no fun effects. There was no manipulation of the sound. It took a while to really build that skill level and to acquire the equipment I use today. So ask yourself all of that, but also ask, who else out there makes content like I'm making? There are not a lot of folks, in my experience. YouTube's a big place. I might have missed them. There's not a lot of folks who make RPGs for a living who are talking about the business side of things, who are trying to help everybody else out there reach their dreams and make their hobby into a job. But at the same time, that means there may not be that many people looking for that kind of content. So there's going to be a bit of a toss-up. Lastly, though, what happens when you finally get over that finish line? When you finally make all of the hours that you need, you've paid your dues, you've done essentially your internship for however long it took you to get here. That's when money comes in, right? Well, yes and no. Because I've been talking with Adrian. As I said, this isn't my channel, so I need to get the numbers from him. According to Adrian, the 3 years we put in building our audience, all the different shows we've put out, all of the different places we've gone to try and get support, all of the variety of videos, including the one that is, went semi-viral and is still getting views, all of that energy nets us roughly $20 a month. Now, it is also important to remember that YouTube, through, I believe it's Google AdSense is the system they use because I'm not allowed on it. Through that system, pays you out when you hit, I believe it's $100, specifically for YouTube. So all of that time, all of that energy, everything we put in to get a couple $100 a year. That's not nothing, but it's kind of, well, not something you can pay your rent with. So if you are out there and you are hoping to make YouTube your main platform, if you are hoping to really make it a part of your business plan, ask yourself and really think about the answer. How long is it going to take you to hit those numbers? How much money can you depend on your audience to give you, whether it's through ad revenue watching the videos, whether it's through supporting you on Ko-fi or straight through YouTube as a platform, and how much content or how many supplements, how many games can you sell through your videos? Because that was the main thing that kept it going, that really started us off, is the hope, and it really is a hope in some circumstances, that people will watch a video about a product or a game or something like that, and they'll decide to them, that looks really cool. I want to pick that up. I want to use that at my table. Because, as an example, the problem with Pentex has garnered over 6,000 views. Relatively small in terms of YouTube views, but for us, it's really impressive. Out of those 6,000 views, and sure, some of those might have been the same person, some of those might have been, people rewatching it because they missed something, but we'll say 5,000 people probably watched that video. Just ballpark it, I'm pulling a number out of my butt. But let's say that many people watched it. Out of all those people who watched it, we sold one copy of the Pentex supplement that I talk about and specifically call out multiple times throughout that video. The commercial we have in the middle of it for W energy drinks, not a single sale. We've had a little bit of interest. Some people have clicked through to check it out. No one's bought anything. So, like I said, be realistic about what you can expect to happen based on your traffic, your goals, your audience. And if you can, be a little pessimistic. Ask yourself, what happens if none of the things I want go the proper direction? What happens if you put all the time and energy and effort into this video and no one buys copies of the game? No one really shares it around. It doesn't go viral. How much time and energy can you afford to put into that before it becomes a problem? Because I wish all the success for everyone out there. This is a rough job, and it can be really satisfying to just make things, even if they're things that really only you and a handful of other people really enjoy. But if you're going to do this as a business, if you're going to do this, or even as just part of a business, you need to be realistic with yourself about what is likely to happen. And you could be wrong. Something could happen and it could shoot skyward. Massive amount of success. It goes viral for no apparent reason. Or it only becomes obvious to you later why it went viral. But you can't really engineer that. Not without huge advertising budgets, not without a team of people really, experienced in making that happen. So again, YouTube is one of those things that you can make money at it, just like RPGs are something you can make money with. But the ability to make money with it is not the same as a guarantee. So that's been our journey through the platform. We are doing our best to keep it going and to make certain that we get some more successes like we saw. But I don't want to discourage anyone, and at the same time, I don't want anyone showing up here thinking this is easy money that you can just throw your hat in the ring and it'll be done by next month. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of investment and you really need to diversify how it is you're going to earn with the platform. Because there's the 3 different methods that YouTube can pay you for once you qualify, and that's the important bit. There's also crowdfunding. You can get ads placed in your videos. You can try to sell products yourself. If you're going to do this seriously, you need to understand what your options are, and you need to take advantage of them the best you can, because it can be very difficult to add these things in as you go, especially if your audience is used to you not doing these things. So keep in mind all of those aspects. Make sure that you have a plan, ask questions, and look around. Not just us. We're a relatively small channel, which is why I'm hoping my experience will be more relevant to folks who are starting out. But listen to other creators, find videos about them talking about what their experience has been like, and remember that things change. Just like how you can't talk to Stephen King about how you become, a nationwide best-selling novelist these days, because his experience started in the 70s. The things that he'd have to tell you aren't relevant today, and if you watch interviews with him, he knows that. Same thing with a lot of YouTubers that started 5-10 years ago who do this as a living. The rules were completely different when they started. They could tell you what works now, but they can usually only tell you what works from the position they're at rather than the position they were at. But before I ramble on any further, that's my video for the day. Hopefully some folks found it interesting, found it enlightening. And if you have more questions about YouTube as a platform, how you end up getting to where we are, and hopefully beyond, leave those in the comments down below, along with any suggestions for future videos you want to see covered on this channel, or future topics you want to see me talk about regarding the business of TTRPGs and all of the things associated with it. But until then, this is your Tabletop Mercenary, signing off. First and foremost, thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Tabletop Mercenary. If there's a question you have about being an RPG creator, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below so I can address it in a future episode. If you want to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going, then please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and giving it a share on your own social media pages to help boost the signal. Lastly, if you really enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip by buying me a Ko-fi or becoming a Patreon patron at the links in the video description below. You'll find me on both sites under the name The Literary Mercenary.